Our third question follows on the heels of who is God, which was the second question in our series. And this one focuses on the Trinity. So after Christ ascended into heaven in Acts chapter 1, Christians set about trying to summarize key things about the Christian faith. One of those things is our description of God, like the doctrine of the Trinity. And if you want to summarize something accurately, you need to lay everything out on the table, all the evidence, lay it out on the table and consider it, and then sum up what all the evidence says. And here, about the doctrine of God, it's pretty clear that there is one God who somehow eternally exists as three divine people, Father, Son, and Spirit, each of them equal in power and in glory. And so the immediate puzzle is to figure out how we ought to picture this working. How can the one being who is God eternally exist as three distinct people? So Christians have tried to answer this question in several ways, and each orthodox answer will tend towards one of two poles. You might emphasize the oneness aspect, that God is one, a bit more, or you might emphasize the threeness aspect, that there's one God who eternally exists as three persons more than the other. But as long as you affirm both the oneness and the threeness, like our question and answer does on your screen, then everything's going to be fine. Someone might emphasize one more than the other, but as long as both are affirmed and held to, you have a Christian answer, emphases aside. So, how should you tell the three people apart? How should we picture this? I'm going to explain two ways the church has answered this question. The first is an older way that emphasizes the oneness a little more than the threeness. This is also called eternal generation of the Son and procession of the Holy Spirit. And this is what it says in a real quick nutshell, that the way you tell the one God, who Father, Son, and Spirit are the same essence. So how do you tell them apart is this: the Son's person was generated by the Father in a non-physical way. The Nicene Constantinople Creed says begotten, not made. You might be familiar with that language. So in a non-physical way, and the Father generated the Son's person in a timeless way, begotten of the Father before all ages, in a manner that we can't ever really fully grasp. But this timeless or eternal generation doesn't imply that Jesus is subordinate to the Father, or that he came to exist at a point in time, or that he was created. And the Spirit proceeds or is sent forth from the Father and the Son. And this is really hard for some of us to picture in our minds because it doesn't seem to make a lot of sense when we try and lay it out. Some Christians, in trying to further explain what this means, sometimes go too far and can make it seem like the Son originates from the Father like a created being. But we know it can't mean that. And so it makes you want to ask, well, what exactly are you saying then? One passage that Christians have pointed to in support of this is John 5:26, which reads, "For as the Father has life in himself, so he has granted the Son also to have life in himself." And the idea, allegedly, is that the Father has life in himself, and he gives this to the Son. He's eternally generated the Son, and now the Son has the same life in himself. That's one way Christians have tried to answer how do you tell Father, Son, and Spirit apart in the one God. A different way, a newer way, is to emphasize the threeness. This is called a social model of the Trinity, and it pictures God as a single compound unit. Father, Son, and Spirit are knit together by love into this one unit. None can exist without the other. Their same essence binds them together in an eternal circulation of divine life, kind of like the same way that the heart, the lungs, and the brain are meant to operate in symmetry with one another as a complete whole. They aren't meant to stand on their own. They only are what they are in conjunction with the others. And sort of like in a marriage, you have two distinct people who come together to form one unit, and there's this invisible bond that unites the husband and wife together, which is why it's so painful when that bond is broken apart. And so, in an analogous way, God is one in the sense of being a single constellation or a single society of persons, of three, knit into one. Each person, Father, Son, and Spirit, remains an active agent, yet acts for and with the others in a united action. The same way my wife speaks on her own, but also speaks for us as a single married team. that's a way to picture how the one God can eternally exist as three persons, Father, Son, and Spirit, in a way that that communicates well. I think this newer model, this social Trinity picture, communicates better today than the older way that many Christians still find appropriate and use. And this means that God understands love and relationship and community belongingness because that's what he is. He's a single society knit together into one. And we want belonging, relationship, community, love because we're made in his image. We reflect that nature. And in Jesus, God is inviting us to restore our relationship with him and so then with each other so we can have the community that he hardwired us to want.